Hi, I'm Derek Barton, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's November 26, 2020. I'm John Swinimer. If you have a comment, criticism, or question, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Derek Barton about WhitCAF 2020. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And don't forget about the new YouTube channel. Hosted by the Whitby Library in Whitby, Ontario, the annual Comic Arts Festival celebrates comic book creators and makers in a variety of fun and entertaining activities, including exhibits, panels, readings, artist alley contests, and more. Derek resides in Oshawa, Ontario, and he's been sketching and drawing pretty much his whole life, being influenced by comics and animation. According to Derek, I am just starting to build the nerve to put myself out there. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Derek Barton about WhitCAF 2020.
So, Derek Barton, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, thank you for having me, John.
I appreciate it. What I'd like to do to start off the very bat is catch people off guard and ask them what was their first comic book they remember reading. So, do you remember what that might have been?
I'm going to say I was a huge Transformers fan when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I remember getting a bunch of those visiting my grandparents when I was about 6. I want to say Zellers or Byway, like one of the old chain stores that don't really exist anymore. Used to have comics like bundled in like a 3 or 4 pack or whatever, and remember getting like the first 3 issues of Transformers.
Wow, that was the best, eh?
Oh yeah,
that's cool. Good stuff. So I want to talk a bit about the newest project that you're promoting these days. What are you working on?
Right now I'm working on a couple pages. I don't know if you're familiar with TikTok Tom, if you've done any interviews with any of that crew.
No, I'm sorry I haven't. What is that all about?
It's an online comic, all again local artists within Oshawa, Whitby area put together a web comic. They had a Kickstarter for one of their books a few years ago I was part of, and I got to know some of the team from the various library shows in the area. So back in August, they asked if I wanted to contribute a 2-page story to their first color annual.
Oh, great.
So contributing towards that and coming up to the deadline. If you remember my Twitter, you know the story behind that.
Right. Well, that's sounds like you're keeping busy, that's for sure. So I want to talk a bit about how you got your start. Like, what made you get into making comics?
Making comics, like any kid, I always really enjoyed drawing, and then because comics were always at the nearby corner store, it wasn't a thought like I wanted to do this. I liked comics, but I looked more at cartoons and that growing up, again, citing Transformers. And then when that went off the air, the comics were still going, so I got a little more into that. And then about 13 or 14, started noticing more comic shops opening up. And I remember my 14th birthday, and specifically, I started collecting comics seriously, and now found maybe not animation, but I can definitely see myself drawing comic book stuff. And then as I was collecting the comic book stuff, I started taking that seriously about the time of the early 90s image boom. You remember that?
Oh, right. Yes, absolutely.
So for better or worse, that was kind of getting on the ground floor as I was starting to look at comics. And starting out, I didn't know, reading the credits, penciler, inker, some of the art stuff seemed a little hazy. And then when I graduated junior high, I ended up getting a video with how to create a comic with again some of the image guys that kind of explained some of that, stuff that I should have been able to put together but didn't until I got my hands on this, things that I learned, I always thought these cartoonists kind of drew everything perfect right off the bat. I had no like even in art class I was taking at that point, the idea of construction lines and being able to lay down pencils and erase and tinker until things looked right before I applied ink. That was stuff I didn't really know until I got exposed to that stuff. And as I was continuing like collecting comics, at the same time the store I was going to was also ordering like how to draw books. You couldn't like how to draw or how to draw comics the Marvel way, comics and sequential art by Will Eisner. And at the same time as I was collecting these comics, I was also, or like for holidays, I'd be getting how to draw, like these how to draw books and how to
Right.
draw comics specifically.
Mhm.
These weren't readily available in my local library growing up or in like mainstream bookstores. You had to like these were special orders in the area I grew up.
And then from there, you just got inspired to go off and do your own thing.
Exactly. Learning how like again, and it was really odd because like my high school art classes covered a little bit of a fair bit of drawing and painting and whatnot, but a lot of it was art history, a little
Oh,
more
right.
than so there was a little more of an academic than learning stuff. And then I went to college for graphic design, which was not as much drawing as I would have thought when reading the brochures.
Right. So,
So
what about advice you might have for anyone who might want to make their own comic book?
my biggest piece of advice is just do it. I've like for some of my contemporaries who've got way more stuff out than I do, I held off on putting my stuff forward in the public eye for like even the local shows for the longest time, just out of this isn't like just your basic fears like this isn't going to look right. I loved this piece yesterday. I don't like it today. Like all of those thoughts
Mm-hmm.
for the longest time I let them get to me, but now like you just have to just do it.
Right. That's good advice. Good advice. So I want to take a step back and ask you something a little bit maybe more philosophical and ask you what role do you think libraries and library events like WhitCAF and others play in fostering comic books and their creation?
Well, I think like WhitCAF and the other various local libraries and shows, what they do is they kind of put that out in a place like in places that are easily accessible for people to get at. When I was starting out, like Fan Expo started out when I was halfway through high school, going to Toronto for a special weekend. That seemed a little far-reaching sometimes, but being able to go to the local library, not get charged a cover charge,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to kind of freely walk around and talk to a lot of artists. Both, a few of these shows have not only had like local artists like myself, but even local artists that have been able to crack that. Have worked for established companies like Marvel or DC. So like it's I guess being like super accessible, not as crowded as like your typical convention, or have the stress of like asking like an artist, oh, what do I like? Can I show you my artwork?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
it's a more intimate setting, so you can actually discuss art and in a collaborative environment too.
Makes sense. I wonder if you have any favorite memories from past library events that you've attended.
No, I've really enjoyed, well, particularly the library shows. I've like WhitCAF is one of my favorite, but it's kind of weird on the artist side. Like I know there's a lot of panels and whatnot, and when you're in the artist alley working you don't always get the chance to go to all the fun stuff because you have to be at your
Right.
table, which is one thing I'm actually liking about the virtual artist alley that WhitCAF has this year. Like I can still do my thing as an artist and have all the links to my various social media where I will put my finished work up, but in a lot of cases I'll also put up my rough sketches or some of my process sketches too, to show that it is a process and it is a lot of trial and error. But I can do that, and then I can also, like the fan in me, can actually go into whatever event online and watch for myself. So this year I kind of get that artist alley, but I can also be that fan.
Right. Oh, that's cool. Now, you mentioned you're working on edition for a webcomic. I'm wondering if there's any other projects that you have coming down the road that you can talk about.
Nothing much right now. I'm a bit of I'm going to say late starter. Like a lot of my art, like a lot of the stuff I do at Artist Alleys is just my versions of the classics. I put out a lot of my original art, but right now I'm working on a bit of contributing to the TikTok Tom annual, little 2-page story, and then I'm on deck to do a variant cover for another local, I guess formerly local book, Omega Squad.
Oh, okay.
With Chris Barnes. That's available on Amazon. I contributed a variant cover, I want to say late last year, earlier this year. It has a link to my social media, and I'm on deck to contribute another variant cover. Take it from there. What I'm going to do next, I have ideas of what I want to do, just ironing those ideas out and getting them in what format I want to go forward with. If it's a book I'd like to kind of put online first, like the TikTok Tom, or if I want to do old school, say, no, I'm going to save this for print.
Right. Well, sounds like you're going to be busy, that's for sure. Now, you've touched on this just earlier, but where can people buy your art and then also follow you online to figure out what you're going to be doing in the near future?
My social media, I go under Derek Barton Art. That's both Instagram. I have Instagram, the Facebook page, and my Twitter account as far as that goes. And I also have a store through Gumroad. I believe I do have it under Derek Barton Art. I kept it very simple. I have a mentor who's been helping me with my art for the last few years. YouTube artist goes by Cartoon Block, and he helped me kind of figure out what I wanted to do with things like my social media presence. But in this case, keeping it simple with just my name and art makes it easier, makes things easy to find.
Thanks to Derek for the chat. You can discover more about Derek on Twitter at Derek Barton Art and online at gumroad.com/Derek Barton Art. And you can discover more about WhitCAF 2020 at whitbylibrary.ca/WhitCAF. And thanks due for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to the video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2020.